When you get older, the small, quiet things start to matter more. The gentle squeak of a porch swing, the whisper of leaves drifting off the lake, and the sharp scent of pine wood wafting through an open window. That was exactly what I was after when I set out to restore my late Uncle Frank's old cabin. The place had been in the family for decades, a sanctuary of childhood summers, lazy fishing trips, and peaceful weekends where the only sound was the wind in the trees. I thought bringing it back to life would reconnect me with those simpler times. What I ended up finding was something else entirely, a front row seat to the most outrageous display of HOA power I'd ever seen, the flashing red and blue of 3. Patrol cars bounced off the windshield of my pickup as I pulled into the driveway one Saturday afternoon. My heart sank. Officers stood around my truck, the same truck I'd left only 2 hours earlier, still loaded down with groceries, camping gear, and nearly $2,000 worth of supplies. Now the bed was stripped bare, and standing beside them, arms crossed and lips pursed so tight you'd think she was chewing on a lemon, was none other than Karen, the Maple Grove HOA president from across the road. She was dressed like she was heading to Wall Street, not interfering with something that wasn't hers. A navy blue power suit, hair sprayed into immovable perfection. "There he is. Officers," she barked, her voice sharp as a buzzsaw. She jabbed a finger at me like I was a suspect in a police lineup. "That's the man stealing from our community. I caught him red-handed with stolen property, and I made a citizen's arrest by securing the evidence." The sergeant, a tall man with stripes on his sleeve, turned toward me with a skeptical look. "Sir, are you the owner of this property?" "Yes, officer." "This is my cabin," I said firmly, forcing my voice to stay calm even though my blood pressure was through the roof. "I inherited it from my uncle 6 months ago. And that truck? It's mine, registered in my name. I bought everything this morning at Costco and Home Depot. I've got the receipts." Karen's face darkened into a shade of purple that didn't look natural. "He's lying!" she snapped. "This land belongs to the Maple Grove HOA. I've been president for 8 years. I know every inch of our territory. He's squatting here, hoarding supplies, probably running some shady operation. To understand how we ended up at this absurd moment, you'd have to rewind 3 weeks, back when I first started making weekend trips to restore the old place. The cabin sat on 2 acres of lakefront, just outside the official borders of Maple Grove. But try telling that to Karen. The very first day I drove past her house with a truckload of lumber and tools, she burst out her front door like she was chasing down a stray dog. "Excuse me," she called, heels clicking as she practically jogged after my truck. "Where do you think you're going with all that?" I rolled down my window, keeping my tone light. "Just heading to my family's cabin up the road, fixing it up." Her eyes narrowed to slits. "What cabin? There are no authorized structures beyond this point. Everything past Elm Street is HOA territory, and I haven't signed off on any construction projects." That's when it clicked. Karen had built her own little kingdom in her head. Even after I showed her the deed and property survey, she waved it off like I was handing her monopoly money. "Maps can be forged," she sneered. "I'll be keeping an eye on you," and she did. Every single Friday evening, like clockwork, she was there. Binoculars slung around her neck, clipboard in hand, snapping pictures of my plates, squinting at my supplies, tossing comments like darts. "That's a lot of canned food for one person," she hollered once. "Planning for doomsday or running some illegal Airbnb?" I ignored her, but she only doubled down. She left fake violation notices under my wipers, citing HOA rules that didn't apply to me. She called the county inspector, who promptly told her my property was grandfathered and none of her concern. She even tried to form a so-called neighborhood watch just to spy on my cabin. Things reached a boiling point last Friday when I made my biggest supply run yet. Winter was around the corner and I wasn't about to be caught unprepared. My truck was stacked high. Generator, propane, canned goods, blankets, a chainsaw, the works. Easily $2,000 in supplies. And right on cue, there was Karen again. standing in the road like a self-appointed border guard. She actually forced me to stop. "This is getting ridiculous," she said, glaring into the truck bed with open suspicion. "No legitimate cabin owner needs this much. You're either hoarding, dealing, or hiding something illegal. I'm giving you one last warning." "For what?" I shot back. "Shopping at Costco? Fixing up my own property?" Her lips twisted into a smug smile. "The HOA board is voting next week to expand our jurisdiction to cover all properties, accessed through our roads. Once that passes, every nail, every board, every supply will need our approval." I didn't even bother explaining how HOAs don't have the legal authority to annex private property. I was exhausted, the sun was setting, and I still had hours of unloading to do. So I drove on, leaving Karen behind in the road, probably drafting some power-hungry manifesto in her head. The next morning, I got back to work. I spent a few hours installing shelving in the storage room, then decided to run into town for lunch and a couple of extra items. I left my truck parked in the driveway, still half full of supplies. That was my mistake. When I pulled back up 2 hours later and saw the flashing lights bouncing off my empty truck, it all made sense. Karen. While the officers questioned me, I pulled out my phone and opened my security camera app. I'd installed cameras after Karen's early harassment, mostly to protect myself from exactly this kind of nonsense. "Officers, this should clear everything up," I said, showing them the footage. There she was, caught in 1080p, time-stamped, at 1:45 p.m., pulling into my driveway in her white Lexus. She glanced around like a cartoon villain before hauling my supplies into her car. It took her 6 trips to strip my truck clean. The video showed it all, her license plate, her face, even the way she struggled under the weight of a propane tank. Sergeant McClure's expression hardened as he watched. He turned slowly toward Karen. "Ma'am, you told our dispatcher this. Man was stealing from his neighbors and you were securing stolen goods as evidence." Karen's composure cracked. "Well, I mean, look at all that stuff. Normal people don't buy in bulk unless they're up to something." "So you decided," McClure's voice dropped a register, "to remove property from his truck, on his land, based on your assumptions?" "I was protecting the community," she cried. "He's been flaunting HOA rules, ignoring notices, acting suspicious." "Ma'am," Deputy Ruiz cut in firmly. "County records confirm this property isn't HOA land. You had no authority here. You had no right to remove anything." I handed McClure my receipts, every last item purchased that very morning. He studied them, then turned to his deputies. "Ruiz, Harris, escort Ms. Greenwood to her home. Recover every single item." Karen sputtered. "Stolen? I didn't. Steal! I'm the HOA president. I have authority." "Not here, you don't," McClure replied coldly. "What you do have is a legal problem. Theft is theft. And filing a false 911 report is another crime altogether." The next hour was pure satisfaction. I followed the squad cars to Karen's house, where her husband, Greg, opened the door looking like he'd seen a ghost. He apologized profusely, while officers marched box after box back to my truck. Karen scrambled for excuses. "I thought the cabin was abandoned. I believed it was community property. I have emergency powers under the bylaws." Every excuse landed flat. By then, neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk drawn by the patrol cars. I recognized several HOA board members. Their faces shifted from curiosity to horror as the truth unraveled. I even overheard one, Margaret Lee, muttering under her breath, "This is the last straw." As the last box was returned, McClure pulled out his citation book. "Ms. Greenwood, you are being cited for theft of property valued over 2,000 felony level. You are also being cited for false emergency reporting and misuse of 911 services." Karen's legs buckled. She leaned against her Lexus, mumbling about misunderstandings. But I'm the HOA president." "You can explain that to the judge," McClure said flatly. The prosecutor will decide if these charges remain felonies. And then came the knockout punch. Ruiz returned carrying a file. Ma'am, this isn't your first offense. You've had 2 prior citations for false reports and 1 for harassment. The prosecutor will see a pattern here. Karen's face collapsed. She muttered something about calling her lawyer, then stumbled inside her house. Greg stayed behind, red-faced, while the officers finished paperwork. McClure handed me his card. Come by the station Monday, file a full report. She's facing serious charges. Just the felony theft alone could mean up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Karen, who had paused in the doorway, let out a strangled wail when she heard that. 5 years? $10,000? She cried before slamming the door shut. And just like that, the reign of Maple Grove's self-appointed tyrant was over. If you love watching power-hungry HOA presidents finally get what's coming to them, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I share real stories where justice is served and the little guy wins against the bullies. Don't forget to turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next satisfying takedown.